Conversations with Nicole. Let's talk about it. Tell me all about it. I'm here. I wanna know what's on your mind. Ooh, the world needs to hear from you, and I'm so glad to have a conversation to reach the nation. And it's all about you. We'll help each other to discover innovative ways to positively change the world. Let's talk about, let's talk about, yeah. Let's talk about conversations with Nicole.
Greetings. Welcome to Conversations with Nicole. I am Nicole, Everett, your host. And Conversations with Nicole is a talk show based in Tallahassee, Florida, focused on connecting the community through conversations. And today is what I call Mindset Monday, which is an opportunity for you, me, and my guests to chat about something interesting and intriguing. And tonight, oh boy, tonight we are talking about the state of FAMU. I have two, I'm going to call them original Rattlers. Baby Rattlers, Mr. Chuck Hobbs and Mr. Bill Proctor on talking about the state of FAMU. But before I bring them on, and they are no strangers to Conversations with Nicole, having been on my show several times. Before I bring them on, I want to hear from you. Where are you tuning in from? We are live on Facebook, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn. I ask that you put your city and state in the comments so we can give you a shout out, and tag a Rattler, tag a supporter of FAMU, tag the FAMULY, because we all need to be on here for this conversation about the state of FAMU. So I see you, Miss Tracy Gole. Thank you for being here. Again, your comments, your questions are welcome. This is a little bit different from my normal, but it's an important conversation nonetheless. So I see Duval in the house, my freshman FAMU class of 88, Duval, Miss Joyce Thompson here. I appreciate you being here, Joyce. So please tag a friend, let them know they need to be on here for this great conversation about the state of FAMU. It is, many things are developing here, so we want to engage in this conversation. All right, we got Miss Alice Lamar on. Thank you for being here, Miss Alice. Appreciate you here in Tallahassee. All right, I'm not even going to do an intro, right? We just need to go ahead and jump on in. I know, we got the NBA finals on, so I'm sure many of you want to get to that, but we're going to have this conversation first. So up first is Attorney Chuck Hobbs. Welcome, Chuck.
Welcome, Nicole. It's been a while. Good to see you.
It has. Good to see you as well. And Commissioner, Pastor, Professor Bill Proctor.
Good afternoon to both of you. I'm honored to be here. What else can I say?
All right. So I want you all to give just kind of an overview. Let's start a little bit of a timeline in terms of, how you all got involved with this, the presidential search, in terms of your knowledge of the president-elect, Ms. Marva Johnson, how you found out or how you kind of got involved and rung the alarm. So just somebody, either one, whoever wants to talk about it first, like, how give me a timeline on that. Chuck.
Well, it has to go to Commissioner Proctor, my good dear brother from the old high, FAMU high, because actually I got involved because of him.
Okay.
To be 100% honest with you, I just had not had an opportunity to really follow the happenings of the presidential search up to that point. Because remember, once Senate Bill 520 was passed back in 2022, everything was in secret. So, of course, I cursorily read some of the articles from Tara Jean from the Tallahassee Democrat about who the finalists were. And, of course, I grew up with Ronnie Allen. He grew up in University Park, went to Florida High. He was like a big brother to me. Mm-hmm. And, of course, I know Dr. Donald Palm, good brother, good Masonic brother of mine. So those names popped out, but I did not know Gerald Hector or Marva Johnson. And I just was waiting to see the process play out. But when I read Commissioner Proctor's comments around April 24th or 25th, I was like, oh, wait a minute, it's time to what's going on here. And then from there, I started following Commissioner Proctor's lead. So yeah, definitely want to bounce that back over to him.
Well, thank you, Nicole. When I first heard about it, I watched this from a distance. I've always watched FAMU from a distance because it is Florida's #1 economic engine. We have nothing that has a almost $500 million annual budget. So when you're talking about Florida A&M University, you're not only talking education, you're talking economics. You're also talking about an intellectual bank of probably the most decorated and the largest decorated of scientists, engineers, lawyers, scholars of all varieties. There is nothing like Florida A&M University here in the southeastern United States in terms of its scope, its size, its pharmacy school, which graduates 60% of all African-American pharmacists in the United States, 60% coming from one school. It's very important. So I kept a distant eye on the search, knowing that it was announced that the final three, the top three, would come back to the Board of Trustees, who would submit those names to the Board of Governors, who would approve the three names for final consideration by the Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees, thus, instead of three names, things got funny when a fourth name came out. So it was when Tar Jean announced before the Board of Trustees received the names, there was a breach in the confidentiality of this search, in that the newspaper had all the names, published the names, bios, all of that, and the Board of Trustees did not know a thing. That was profound because this is a secret process. And when the search committee, along with the consultant for that group, met, I believe in March, at the Grand Ballroom, I and a few others came out and they said, what do you want in your leader? What do you want the attributes, the character, blah, 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 to be? And so I attended that meeting, and, but for the most part, I've been very casual, laid back and cool, because I was so sure that Dr. Donald Palm would be in the final three. And I just couldn't fathom the person who had been the university's chief operating officer for 3 years at the very site that he's applying for the next one step up above what he'd been doing for 3 years. I couldn't fathom anybody at all applying other than the Lord Jesus Christ himself. And he didn't apply for the job. He has a job. So when this fourth person came, I became intensely interested and noted that the credentials of this person, and to be truthful, the ramblings of the street committee, if you will, had been saying that the fix was in long before we got the fix. And once that occurred, Reverend Moses Miles, who was my pastor, his voice clicked into my head. If anyone would harm FAMU, may their right hand forget its cunning and their tongues cleave to the roofs of their mouths. Dr. Humphreys kicked in. Dr. B.L. Perry, who I was assistant Sunday school teacher to at Bethel, and when he became impaired, he asked me to take his class that he had taught for 64 years, the young people's class at Bethel. And I knew Reverend Miles, I knew Dr. Perry and Dr. Humphreys, also likewise, who had been on the billboards with me during campaign season to endorse me. I felt that I owed their legacies some kind of effort to stand. And so when I made that announcement, Brother Hobbs took it to another level, and he came up with that scathing opinion. I think that just rattled everybody's cages. And then that I spoke with him. He suggested that we go ahead with a town hall meeting. He was there and led the floor charge at Bethel AME Church. The following week, I believe we chose to do a rally at the Will Packer Amphitheater. We were able to convince Mr. Packer that we needed him at the theater, and he came through, and things have been picking up ever since, and it's become a national focal point, virtual meeting among Rattlers, large and larger. So it's been a wonderful moment, except for I feel so much like the underdog, but the dark clouds on the horizon, and we know what to do when that occurs.
Absolutely.
Okay. So the board has voted, and there's been negotiations of, and they voted what, 8-4?
Yes.
Right, 8-4 in favor of Miss Johnson. And then there's been negotiations of her contract and her salary, correct?
Yes.
So can you all give us an update on that?
Well,
Sure. So, sure.
Attorney Hobbs, let's first talk about
Okay.
8-4 vote. The 8-4 vote compared to the University of Florida's unanimous vote for Dr. Santa Ono. Ours is a split vote. It's a fractured vote. It's emotionally charged, and the 8-4 simply it does not convey the sentiments of the faculty, of the students, of the alumni. That 8 is a misnomer to the reality of where the constituencies of FAMU lie. That 8-4 is only, I mean, not saying you got to have a unanimous, but consider that 8-4 was a very strongly fractured vote. Attorney Hobbs will tell you that the day before the voting, the Board of Governors secured somebody from out of nowhere and stacked the deck, if you will. The persons who had voted correctly, the previous meetings were kicked off, not confirmed, and there was some shenanigans coming from the Board of Governors impacting, number one, those who had supported a continued search thrown off the board, and then 24 hours before the final nomination among the final 3, 3+1, then you add someone the night before. So I need to tell you the context, the spirit, and the shenanigans coming from the top, the Board of Governors, infiltrating and stacking the deck. We need to put a little context on that.
Absolutely. And so with that, after I had an opportunity to read the complaint that was filed in Leon County Circuit Court this afternoon by attorneys Mataki Akbar and Enos Leon Jacobs. And Jacobs was at the town hall meeting that Commissioner Proctor convened at Bethlehem as well. In courts of law, one of the things that the courts always tell the defense is that, when they're trying to move to dismiss a particular action, the court has to read the complaint as if at the 4 corners of the complaint and accept all things in the light most favorable to the plaintiffs. So I start off by saying that to everyone who's watching this evening, that assuming that the allegations in the lawsuit are true, there looks to be where attorneys Akbar and Jacobs are going to be trying to establish through evidence. And they put in some they put in some evidence already in the exhibits that would establish that Marva Johnson was the pick as early as last October of 2024. And so, and the way they established that is they discussed the fact that Vice Chair Devin Gibbons, who is a Republican, and he's an individual that's closely aligned with Ron DeSantis, the governor, and Donald Trump and other Republicans, he made comments on the record back in October about a potential non-traditional candidate being the next president of Florida A&M University. As we all know, some schools do tap people from the business world. They tap generals. They tap all sorts of lobbying leaders. It just depends on what the particular bent is for a particular institution. The problem, though, from what I've read today, is that when the Board of Trustees decided to establish criteria, they established 3 hard criterion into a group of criteria for the next president. 1 is that they have a terminal degree. 2, that they have experience at a research intensive university, an R2 or an R1 university. And 3, that they have experience as an administrator with NCAA compliance. Now, what they could have done and I'll tell you both, and the audience is watching, what they should have done. The smart play should have been, if you wanted someone who does not have those three, to place a fourth criterion in play, something to the effect of also has lobbying history, ability to fundraise or meet with political stakeholders. They could have crafted some language that would have fit Marva Johnson's background well, because she has had a pronounced history of doing well as a lobbyist for a number of different business entities, but they didn't. And so when you look at the three criteria that were established for the next president, she met arguably none. And the reason I say arguably is because as a holder of a JD, as is Commissioner Proctor, we both hold JDs, that is not necessarily in the academic world considered a terminal degree. A lot of people don't know that. And so with that in mind, not only does she not have number one, but she has absolutely no experience with number 2 or 3, which is working as an administrator or even faculty at a research university, or any experience with regards to NCAA compliance. In fact, at the town hall meeting, Commissioner Proctor had me almost about to choke with laughter when he was talking about she hasn't even run a preschool or a kindergarten or anything like that. And it's levity, but it's the absolute truth. So with that in mind, the other things that I read in the complaint today is that what really stuck out to me is that, as I was talking about earlier about Senate Bill H20 from back in 2022, Governor DeSantis signed that into law. And what that did is, formally, when a university presidency came open, it was done in the sunshine. And so you would know who the candidates were. You can check out their vita and resumes and see for yourself. But it put it in the dark, so to speak, because the logic was, if people don't know who the candidates are, it could draw a greater pool of potential candidates who don't have to worry about maybe getting in trouble at their existing jobs because they're seeking another job at one of the state university schools. Okay. So with that in mind, knowing that that's supposed to be quiet, what really struck out to me is that apparently, allegedly, there was a meeting that Governor DeSantis had in the middle of March with members of the Legislative Black Caucus, floating Marva Johnson's candidacy as a potential president of FAMU. And when I read that, I was sitting there thinking to myself, I said, so if this was a secretive process and no one is supposed to know who the candidates are, how could Governor DeSantis float her name as a potential candidate 2 or 3 weeks before the finalists got whittled down to 3, and then she was eventually added as a 4th? So if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And at the end of the day, if that is proven, it again goes to show that there was collusion between the governor, his surrogates, as well as those members on the board of trustees to place in the individual that they wanted in to office. So again, we have to sit back and watch, but that's how the 8-4 came out. As Commissioner Proctor just said, there was a last person that was added, and that would be Trustee Rafael Vasquez, I believe is his name, the owner of several McDonald's restaurants here in North Florida. And what was crazy about that, y'all, and I know that I watched every second of every interview that Marva Johnson gave, and I went in there with an open mind. I did not go into the interview thinking I can't stand her, I don't want her, I don't know her. And so I wanted to hear her, and she objectively did not perform well in those interviews. First question out the gate was about what would you do with FAMU DRS. She started talking about all sorts of mentoring programs and what have you. And I was sitting there scratching my head as someone who actually used to attend FAMU DRS. I was saying she doesn't even know what FAMU High is. She doesn't know what the role is. And so there were several instances like that where softball questions were lobbed her way and she wasn't prepared. But again, if you already know that the fix is on, you don't have to prepare. You just go in and you sit there and you talk and you smile and you nod and you know that the fix is on. And that's what we were saying about the Vasquez guy. This gentleman did not participate in the interviews. He did not get to vet all 60 candidates during the search and what have you. But he got on a Thursday and voted on a Friday for Marva Johnson. So again, there was some collusion here at the highest levels, it looks like, and it's going to be very interesting once this case gets to court to see how these things get explained by people like Vice Chair Devin Gibbons, who have spent the last 2.5 months trying to explain anybody with a dunce cap on that, oh, there was no collusion. There was nothing to it. No. This was all done. Okay, we'll see. It's going to be interesting to see if all of that holds up once the light comes on and the roaches start to scatter in regards to individuals who had information or saw things and are like, well, I'm not going to get in trouble about it. I'm going to tell the truth about what happens. That's usually what happens.
Wow.
Well, let me just augment to what Attorney Hobbs has said, and that is, what was that bill you cited that gives the privacy?
HB 520 from the 2022 legislative session.
Understand that very bill was to give cover to administrators at other universities who might be applying, such as Dr. Ono at the University of Michigan when he applied for a position at the University of Florida. He was given the cover of night, of darkness, to make that application, that there would be no blowback against him at the University of Michigan. Secretly, you can do that. But it was assumed that that legislation would protect in-place higher education personnel. It don't even apply to Marva Johnson because she don't work at no university. She ain't had nothing to cover up. She didn't need nothing to cover her up because the legislation was put in place for those at a university applying someplace else to make the pool richer, more vast, and to give it greater velocity of more applicants. She didn't even fit the spirit of that legislation because she was not an administrator at all. And then also in the community report that I filed today with the Florida Board of Governors, I filed a formal community report and request for a new FAMU presidential search this afternoon. And the first discussion item I mentioned is minimum qualifications. And I'm reading from the actual application of minimum qualifications. It says combined administrative, and that's a conjunction. And Dr. Hobbs, you went to Morehouse, and there's a conjunction, right?
Yes, sir.
I thought that I had to be correct in front of you. Combined administrative and academic experience at a research university and experience with D1 athletics are preferred. So we've got administrative and academic experience and at a research university and experience with D1 athletics. Those are things that are preferred. She has neither. My opening first sentence says, the FAMU alumni, students, and faculty are citing the plain meaning of this advertisement as legally problematic in noting Marva Johnson does not meet or have the minimal qualification set forth by FAMU's formal presidential advertisement. That's the opening sentence. This is a problem. It ain't that she's a Republican. It is that she's not qualified to lead the #1 public HBCU in the nation. I don't care if she was Martian, Plutonian, what else up there? Saturn. I don't care where she come from. She's not qualified. That is what we're trying to say. And anybody who would suggest that we got a problem with her political, that's not what we got a problem with. Our problem starts with she has no administrative, academic experience at a research, and she got no experience with D1 athletics. That part. When you read, and I also submitted with this community report, her interest letter, which is, I'm not going to pull it up and, because I wouldn't want nobody to hang mine up on the clothesline, but pull it up and you'll see I got it right here. Her little letter is very feeble. Don't take long to go through. It's a one-pager. And then you look at Donald Palms and you're like blown away. So I've submitted the statements of all 4 applicants that the Board of Governors, which has stewardship over maintaining the quality of leadership that all 12 state university system universities should receive. The sameness of qualitative applicants, such as a Dr. Ono at Florida. Nobody questioned his credentials. Those is ideology. But here at FAMU, it flows deeper. It's not her ideology, it's her credentials that we have problems with. So we're on this journey to seek a new presidential search. And I believe Attorney Hobbs probably can articulate more meaningfully, but I believe that there are greater variables for the Board of Governors to call for a new FAMU presidential search than the mere variable of ideology at the University of Florida. If ideology was enough to call for a do-over at Florida, then certainly a nominee with no credentials is an even greater variable for which to call for a do-over search. And this is what I'm hearing from the Rattler Nation. How have we assessed this? Well, anecdotally, you could say we've had town hall meetings, we've had rallies, we've had listening sessions, we've had national town hall virtual meetings. There's been a lot of discussion here, there, everywhere on this topic. And I can't think of anything in recent memory where the Rattler Nation, from east to west, north to south, has been more thoroughly engaged and concerned about than this matter. And on at our town hall meeting, we had 1,200 live stream on one camera. We had 1,800 live stream on another camera. When we went out there, did the rally at Packer Amphitheater, we had live stream. I'm trying to say that the report that I'm sharing with the Board of Governors has been gathered from broad and deep spectrums of the constituency base of Florida University.
Okay. So someone said qualifications, Robin Wood, qualifications should matter. Agreed.
Absolutely. One of the ironies here is the fact that the modern Republican Party, particularly Ron DeSantis here in Florida, but Donald Trump too, because he sets the pace, has made a huge issue over the last few years about diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. They have made it almost a rallying cry that would make you assume that if you're a Black Secretary of Defense or a Black Chief of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, or if you're a Black Cabinet Secretary or in any position of prominence, that you got it because of the color of your skin. That's what the MAGA folks are out here screaming up and down the hallways and the highways and on social media. But what's interesting about that is if qualifications actually matter to them, and they don't. I mean, let's just look at, we could talk for days about Donald Trump's own cabinet, where he's got the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker in his cabinet, folks who aren't qualified to lead most of the positions he's given to them. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that DEI is important. I think that it says a lot that here at the #1 public HBCU in the United States of America, that they think it's okay that someone who has spent her entire career in lobbying, telecommunications lobbying, no experience actually as teaching or as an administrator. And they love to just throw out the fact that she sat on educational boards, and that's great. But sitting on educational boards does not an educational administrator make. It's a different ball of wax altogether. She isn't qualified. So at the end of the day, like Commissioner Proctor says, it's not the fact that she's a Republican that's giving any pause for concern. It's the fact that she would start on day one with no experience with the job that she has to have. And on top of that, she would be coming into a climate where there are tens of thousands of FAMU students, alumni, and stakeholders who have problems with the process. Again, not problems with her personally, problems with the fact that as early as last October, the fix was on from the beginning for her. And it didn't matter what her qualifications were or were not. They were going to make this happen. And you have to ask yourself the next question, which is why? Why this individual? And I've even heard her make comments, and I've seen some surrogate friends and families of hers say, well, she was approached about being the president of FAMU. Who approached her? And why did they approach her? for this particular position. And the other part of that is, would they have installed her as president at the University of Florida with such porous qualifications? Would they put her in at UWF? No, they wouldn't. And so why is it that they would put somebody so unqualified in the presidency at FAMU if there was something else not at play? And I also want to address, I know there was someone in the chat who made a comment about a Morehouse man and a Howard Tyson.
We not going there.
Yeah, we grew up at FAMU High, y'all, all right? We were wearing orange and green before most of y'all ever even put in an application to go to FAMU. So never question our credentials, who we are, who our family members are when it comes to that. We've got long storied histories on the Hill. And so please don't do that. Yeah.
It's okay. We're not addressing that one. And somebody else already responded to it, so it's fine. But we're about halfway through our talk. I do want to bring up Mr. Wilcox's question. With respect, Attorney Hobbs, to the petition filed today, do you think standing may be an issue?
Of course. That's an excellent question, Brother Wilcox, and it will be. And I believe that having read through the plaintiffs list that Attorneys Jacobs and Akbar have, I do believe that the standing issue will be fine because they have a group of plaintiffs who are alumni members and donors, which means under Florida law, they are stakeholders who have an active interest in what's going on there at Florida A&M University and the outcome of this presidential search.
Okay. Michael Cork, he has a question. Thank you for being here, Cork. He said, when DeSantis brought her to the Black Caucus, what was their reason for not ringing the alarm that the fix was on for an unqualified candidate? And how do we hold them accountable? And can we count on their support?
Another good question. Brother Proctor, you want to take that? No, every tub got to sit on its own bottom. If they ain't thought through it, hell, I can't think for them. And it's a shame that they have bought into the okie doke.
I would also add to that just that there are roughly about 22 Black Caucus members. And I think only about three to four of them are FAMU alum.
Right.
So I feel like FAMU is not even on this Florida Black Caucus that we currently have is a non-issue for them.
Right. And I think that at the end of the day, you know, a lawsuit it's only allegations at this point. So at some point in time, attorneys Akbar and Jacobs are going to have to produce evidence that that meeting took place. But again, having been in the legal system for over 2 decades, I know that most lawyers are not going to plead something that they don't believe they have good faith reason to believe that it can be established. And so with that, I too would be curious at a hearing or from a deposition to read and see what was at that meeting, when did it take place, and what did the folks who were approached know, and what was the rationale behind Governor DeSantis getting behind Ms. Johnson at that point in time. Very interested to see again. And one of the things, Nicole and Commissioner Proctor, that I've been talking about since this came out earlier today, and I've been talking about it in my blogs for over a month. They had an opportunity to make this easy. If that's who you wanted, put that in as a fourth criteria, which is, hey, there's an alternative path to the presidency, which is if you bring fundraising skills, if you bring lobbying skills, things of that nature to the table, a successful candidate could get in under that rubric. They didn't do that. And so when, as Commissioner Proctor read out in the letter that he's drafted, when you say that these are the criteria, and if a person doesn't meet it, at the end of the day, they're not qualified. And you have to just ask yourself, how is it that 8 individuals on the board of trustees could not only go against the criteria that they set, no one else said it, the entire board set what the criteria would be, how they could sit and listen to thousands of FAMU stakeholders who have raised their voices, from prominent, powerful people like Kim Godwin and Will Packer to people who are everyday Rattler faithful who, you know, just love the university. Folks have said, we've got concerns about the process, not the person, the process. And with that, it's going to be very interesting to see that piece litigated. And there's another interesting piece about it too, y'all, is the whole idea of, I don't know if y'all got to see some of the news reports about this, and definitely it was covered on social media quite a bit. But last Friday, in the latter part of the legislative session, the special session, there was a rider bill, a bump bill, so to speak, that was added for the Speaker and the Senate President to give consideration to allowing FAMU to go past that $200,000 hard cap, because a lot of people don't know this. In the presidential salary structures, the state of Florida only pays $200,000. So when you see contracts that a president is making $600,000 a year, or $700,000, or even 1 point something million at schools like the University of Florida, the bulk of that salary is paid by outside organizations that are affiliated. They're called direct service organizations that are affiliated with the university. And so knowing that there's a $200,000 cap, the question is, why is it that somebody in the legislature just last week, after they learned that the foundation, the FAMU Foundation, does not have the money to pay the salary that the Board of Trustees had agreed to, which was $4.8 million over the course of 5 years, why all of a sudden would the Florida legislature agree or consider, because they haven't agreed to it, but consider allowing FAMU, the only school that would do this, to use discretionary funds that could go for buildings, for student services and things of that nature to pay the salary. So folks, again, the argument that the fix is on, the evidence is there. It's just going to be very interesting to see what happens when folks get subpoenaed and they have to answer for these things in a deposition or in a court of law.
So let
me just add on to that right there. What the legislature did on Friday to tack language onto this budget, for which the legislature, I believe, still in town unless they voted it today, was to allow FAMU to utilize carryover or carry forward dollars from accounts in the university. The state has not put new money on the table. It simply said that the Board of Trustees can scavenge, can go through and seize any monies available as carryover dollars to pay the university's president. Now, what that does, it sets up a food fight. What that does, it's like the crab. The crab is a creature that if it can't obtain food external outside of itself, the crab will inwardly eat itself from within. FAMU is not getting new money from outside to feed this crab. What FAMU has got to do is suck from within itself and eat from within itself. And that right there sets up a precedent of failure, because it's the president's paycheck versus everybody else's budget. Every unit budget is subject and by law can become an access point for garnering money to pay the president's salary. When you set the president up to get paid first off the top, yesterday was Father's Day. And one of the things about a great father, a great leader, he may not get new shoes for Christmas. He may not get nothing for Christmas, but he wants to make sure that those he recognizes as family, that they're fed, that they're clothed, that they got a house, they're taken care of. He don't take his out first, but the legislature has set Florida A&M up to self-implode and to turn the president against any money that she want to find to pay herself off the top. Go figure.
So we got two questions on the floor. Joy said, will the lawsuit delay the confirmation?
It depends. It could. It very well could, because that's what, with it being filed, I guess, today, and the Board of Governors meetings are tomorrow and Wednesday. It all depends on what a judge does. A judge could grant what's called a temporary injunction in lieu of further proceedings. And if that happens, then that means that no, she would not be able to be confirmed this week until the issues are litigated. Or a judge could take a look at it and deny it summarily on the merits. So it just all depends. It's too early to tell, but that is a possibility of what could happen.
Okay.
Attorney Hobbs, was that an injunction filed today?
Yes, sir. It was.
Okay. Well, I'm not a lawyer, but I play one on TV. The nature of an injunction is to place on hold any actions which might expedite irreparable harm. And if through the actions of the Board of Governors, let's say that Board of Governors signed a 5-year contract, 4-year contract for $4 million for Marvel Johnson.
Mhm.
And then later on down the line, it was decided that something was done not proper. Would that void that contract, or would FAMU be on the hook for $4 million? So the irreparable harm, which I'm sure these great lawyers have demonstrated to the court on the front end, is that we need you to hold up, impair any decision, hold up until these matters are litigated, so that harm and injurious dynamics against FAMU's constituencies will not occur. That's the nature of an injunction to argue court, stop this. If you don't stop it, somebody gonna get hurt. We need you now. And then the lawyers come back to articulate a more substantive basis, but they've got to lay out at least enough reasons to the court to say, well, let me hear this before the Board of Governors acts fully.
All right.
Absolutely.
So Janita asked, what are some of the next steps for the attorneys? I think that's kind of been flushed out. Is there anything else that we should know about, like next steps for the attorneys?
Well, I do know, as I'm reading here, it was filed in Leon County Circuit Court, and so cameras are allowed in Leon County Court. So whenever it's set for a hearing, if it's set for a hearing, I can guarantee you that the news coverage, local news, will definitely be there, and it very well could be a thing where this gets a lot of national coverage, because unfortunately, this has gotten a lot of national coverage. There have been articles in just about every mainstream medium that I can think of about this particular action. So yes, there will be an opportunity for some type of footage coverage, and it's open to the public. The Leon County Courthouse is open to the public. So whenever the attorneys indicate that a hearing has been set, assuming that a hearing is set, I'm quite sure we all will blast it on our social media pages so that anybody who wants to attend and pay attention can come and watch the process. The second question is, what are the next steps? That is the next step. Those lawyers are gonna, when I was still very much actively practicing, the wait is on. You're waiting to see whether a judge is going to grant you a hearing or not. So I'm quite sure that they are dotting their I's and crossing their T's and getting prepared to go in and argue this particular injunction once they get a green light from the court to do so. Mm-hmm.
Daryl Wilcox asked about a direct support organization. That FAMU Foundation is a direct support organization, which sounds kind of contrary to what you stated before, Chuck, in terms of 200,000 being the threshold, and typically they're non-direct support organizations that make up, these higher salaries for university presidents. So that sounds like a conflict there.
It does. And Nicole, that's another one of the things that kind of confused me, is that even when she was voted for 8-4, about 10 days after that, the foundation, I don't even think it was 10 days, had a meeting out at the National Alumni Association convention in Dallas. And during that meeting, what happened is one of the directors of the foundation, Lawrence Humphreys, another FAMU High Baby Rattler and Morehouse man, moved to table the decision to support the suggested contract until such time as the foundation could study whether it had enough money in the coffers to be able to pay it. And that motion was carried. And yet the week after that, or a little bit over a week after that, the Board of Trustees, still knowing that the foundation hadn't yet been able to conduct or get a copy of a feasibility study to determine, okay, this is how much money we can put on the books for this, they decided still to go ahead and ratify the contract for the almost $4.8 million, not knowing where the source of that money was going to come from, because the foundation said they didn't have it. So then the following week, the Board of Trustees had another meeting. And at that point, when they were trying to decide whether to adopt the foundation budget or not, it became pretty readily apparent at that point that the money was not there that was going to be able to get Ms. Johnson into that $650,000, $700,000 or so per year range that she was seeking. So again, it's one of those things where it boggles my mind in terms of what is the rush? Like, why rush? Why not wait out for another 30 days to see the feasibility study? Why not wait out to see if there's some great benefactor who is going to be willing to put in the money to supplement Marva Johnson's salary so that she could be successful. But for whatever reason, and I don't know the reasons, but it seemed as if there was a rush to get this thing done, when in reality, if they had just calmed down, again, on the front end, if they had put in an alternative criteria for a lobbyist, and if they had just calmed down to wait for the feasibility study on the money, part of the problems that are addressed in this lawsuit would have been rendered moot because they would have had answers, but they're rushing. And I can't figure that out for the life of me.
I would say to that, Nicole, that I call that board of trustee malpractice. That's board of trustee negligence. And they have a fiduciary duty to offer stewardship, which financially they can point to the future and know how the university will pay its bills and how the university will be able to meet its responsibilities. And as a county commissioner, the county commission will not incur debt obligations for the county, of which we have no pathway to assess how we're going to meet it. That's just county commission malpractice. This is devastating that the Board of Governors, which has oversight over all of our state universities, would allow one of their universities to come close to this level of negligence, not to know how you're going to pay, which makes me nervous because I'm a faculty at FAMU. If you don't know how to pay the president, how you going to know how to pay the political science instructor? You ain't got to know. So you're lowering the bar. There is no bar when you let the people who are the stewards, who are the guardians, who are the caretakers of university, who has so if athletics comes up in the red this year, don't nobody ought to say nothing. If we fall short and any student ain't got their money, when they come, don't put them out, because you're running a raggedy ship. And students ought not have to have all of their tuition, because you ain't got to have all of your understanding of how to pay the president. But you've been given access to go and raid the funds of carryover dollars within your university, go and scavenge accounts to pay this president. I think that that's a difficult new lowering of the bar. And if that's the standard of operating procedures, that you don't know how to pay the leader of the institution, you certainly don't have to know how to pay nobody else.
Daryl Wilcox asks how can he obtain a copy of the emergency petition for injunctive relief?
Of course.
Sure. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put, Nicole, I'm going to send you a message right now with a copy of my blog. And in my blog, I received a copy earlier today directly from attorney Enos Jacobs. And I was able to put the link to that in here. So I'm going to send that to you. And if you can put that in the...
I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, with the chat, that'll be great. So I'm doing that right now.
Court said, we need y'all to litigate this. You two have laid this out extremely well. Best. Beyond the emotions and political nuances, you two have presented the facts that clearly proves collusion. We need y'all on the legal team.
Well, I tell you what, Attorney Akbar and Jacobs are two of the most brilliant and committed folks that I know. And again, we're here to support them. I'm not actively practicing at this time, and I don't believe Commissioner Proctor is either, but we're definitely, the brains are still there, and we definitely will be supporting them in the court of public opinion with the legal nuance and the explanations of what precisely is at stake and what it is they're arguing. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what happens, because again, it's real basic. The question I keep coming back to, Nicole and Commissioner Proctor, is why? Like, why the shadowy stuff? Why the rush to get these things done for this particular candidate? The why keeps, like, again, someone who's inexperienced, you just have to ask yourself, what is really at stake for them to go to these types of lengths where, again, people might be looking at civil and or potential criminal penalties based upon certain things that have taken place in the selection of this particular president. And it's interesting. I'm willing to bet that some people thought that, well, you know, FAMU folks, they'll fuss for a little bit, but they'll eventually roll over. I don't think they anticipated that there were going to be tens of thousands of people raising their voices. I was involved in the Keepers of the Flame group. And when we had that Zoom, there were like well over 2,500 people on that Zoom chat. I know that the Keeper of the Flame letter that we circulated had over 10,000 signatures. I know the petition from change.org, I believe that was the group, that petition had over 15,000 signatures. And I just don't think that they expected this kind of pushback. And I mean, if you look at what's going on at the University of Florida, there's been some fussing about it, but there hasn't been the sustained protests down there about President-elect Ono's being clipped by the Board of Governors as what you're seeing now. This isn't going to go away. And so with that in mind, I can only hope that the legal process bears fruit. But if not, they still have a problem. If ultimately Marva Johnson is confirmed as president of Florida A&M University, she comes in and it's going to be tough rowing for her, because there are tens of thousands of FAMU supporters who, it's not that they have a problem with her per se. Now, some people do, but most people that I talk to don't have a problem with her. We don't know her. We have a problem with the process, and a problem with why did the process inure a benefit for her? What is really at stake here? And she's going to struggle with that. From if she is confirmed from the first day in Lee Hall, she's going to have a lot of skeptics that are working for her, and she can't fire everybody up there. I mean, you can't come in like, you know, when a presidential administration comes in to the White House and they can clean house and what have you, and the cabinet agencies and what have you. She can't do that. So with that in mind, I hope that she gives some strong consideration to what it is that people have issues with. It's not her personally. She looks like she's had a wonderful career as a lobbyist. And from people that I know her, they say she's really good people. And I believe that. I only got to meet her for a few seconds at the interview, and she seemed very warm. But it still doesn't mean that she's qualified for this position. I can like you all day long and respect you and what you've done, and still say, like, for instance, I like you, Nicole, but if you tell me, Chuck, I'm going to fly the airplane that we're going to get on to Atlanta, I'm not flying with you. I mean, you're not a pilot. I'm going to get in the car and drive. I say, I'll meet you there.
Oh, Chuck.
You know what exacerbates and undergirds what Attorney Hobbs has said, Nicole, is the fact that many people in conversation, town hall, virtual meeting, is how do you get a candidate probably the least qualified, I would say, in the history of Florida University? How do you go and get such a non-prepared bottom shelf person and reach for top shelf income and salary package? And that's alarming to folks. And they're wondering, what is the agenda here for somebody that don't know how to drive, but yet you're going to put them behind a Maserati type engine. She's not proven even baby steps that she know how to ride a university bicycle. Training wheels got to be on there, but you don't take a bottom shelf. Look at the candidates who applied and give them the top shelf package for salary. Something about that is incongruent. If you would save me a couple minutes, Nicole, I can defer, but I wanted to talk about the equal protection and due process argument that I've placed in front of the Board of Governors, but I can wait until my time.
Go ahead. But after you do share that, I want to hear some next steps from you both regarding what FAMU Nation, FAMU supporters should be doing now. Okay. But
very good. The due process issue in this matter is the fact that in that search committee, there were 14 people. The top 3 finalists were selected. It's been alleged that Board of Governors Vice Chairman Alan Levine was on the committee, and he said after the 3 were chosen that let's put Marva on this list. People said no, and somehow he enticed them to a vote, and they voted it. In my understanding, it failed. It was 7-7, my understanding. So the vice chairman of the FAMU Board of Trustees tried it again and left the room, and went out and came back in and said, well, let's have a do-over. A do-over was held, and this time a caller was on, and they said that it was a member of the search committee who called in, and that time Marva went over and joined the top 3 list. Now, Attorney Hobbs, you know a little something. I was asked the question, how did we get to the top 3 that included 4? And you've heard me say that when you go to the original Constitution, Article 1, you find that a black man is 3/5. And when you put 3/5, 3/5, and 3/5, it leaves room to add another person. That's how you got 4 folk in the top 3 finals. It was a disrespect given to those outstanding, well-qualified black men. But the problem with the due process issue is that you gave 3 extra rounds of voting for 1 name only. And as a former member of the Leon County Canvassing Board, which referees public elections, myself, Judge Akins, and former supervisor of elections, Ion Sancho, we refereed all angles and aspects, decision-making of matters that made the election fair and due process was respected. We open at 7, we close at 7 p.m. And once you get to 7 p.m., you do not extend the voting because the person you wanted did not make the list, didn't get to the runoff, didn't make it. So you decide after 7, let's open it up for 30 more minutes and see what happened. Well, you open it up again for voting. It didn't happen. Then you say, you know what? Let's get another swing on it, but let me go call Pookie or Ray Ray or somebody. You authenticate who's voting at the front end of the meeting. You give permission, that's usually handled by a lawyer, an attorney. There's no attorney in the room refereeing these guys. So representing the state of Florida's agents working in their official capacity was the board vice chairman of the Board of Governors and the Board of Trustees who commandeered and strong-armed the search process to have a second and a third election. But what's the due process failure? The failure is that if you give one candidate the option to be voted on a second time and a third time, you must give all applicants the same chance to do so. That was not allowed. And to the extent that others may have gotten other votes or support, if you're going to take it to 4, you should have given a chance to everybody who was an applicant. And to the extent that you did not, and you excluded those persons who had a property interest in the outcome of this election, that qualified them as a job applicant for due process protection at a public university and a public, though private hearing, but public because the Board of Governors representing the state of Florida and FAMU's Board of Trustees, public officials doing a do-over and not allowing anybody else the same voting opportunity violates everybody, those other 50 candidates who didn't get that same chance.
Okay. Thank you for
Attorney
that.
Hobbs, does that add up, sir?
Man, that math is mathing, like the folks say. That's good stuff, brother. Good stuff.
I don't usually do my math in public.
All right.
So Cork had a question. With that being said, if she's confirmed, at what point do we shift from protest to support? Do we have an agenda of what we want from the president?
Yeah, that's another excellent question by Brother Cork. And I see that Ms. Fortson has a similar question with that. And I think that there's a both and thing at play here, right? I do know just from some conversations I've had that there are some committed diehard Rattlers who are already trying to make inroads with the president-elect in case she's confirmed. Folks who were frustrated by the process as well, but understand that if she is in office, all of us want the success of Florida A&M University, and anyone who doesn't want that isn't one of us to begin with. So I can say that there will be some people who will be trying to advise and make sure that the new president, if she is confirmed, if the lawsuit does not prevail, then yes, there will be people who are prepared to try to ensure that she's successful. Because again, as one of these individuals that I'm friends with said to me recently, her success is ultimately Florida A&M University's success.
Yes.
But separate, when I say both and, there's still going to have to be what we call some watchers on the wall. I don't know if many of you watch Game of Thrones, but I'm a huge Game of Thrones fan. I've watched it 2 or 3 times, all 8 seasons through the past. And when we say watchers on the wall, there are going to have to be some of us who are constantly paying attention to everything that goes on, both with the legislature, as well as what's going on with appropriations, as well as what's going on a day-to-day basis with the administration of the school. And so to that end, having grown up here in Tallahassee, Professor Wilson, Roosevelt Wilson, one of the legendary journalism professors and owner of the Capital Outlook newspaper, in fact, gave me my first gig as a writer, writing for a column for his newspaper many years ago. Professor Wilson used to do these report cards all the time with regards to state legislators and different issues. And I think that we're going to have to be able to have a report card of sorts, taking a look at whatever contract is ultimately ratified if she prevails, see what her performance incentives are, what targets that she's supposed to meet. And not only do you have the people on the inside trying to help her meet those targets, but when those targets are not met, we have to be open and honest with FAMU stakeholders around the world and let them know, okay, this isn't happening, so that we can continue to lobby the powers that be in regards to, if she's not performing well, then we need to get someone into office who will. And we definitely have to be prepared to mobilize and litigate in the instance that some of the people who are in support of her, like allegedly Ron DeSantis and others, who are constantly talking about anti-DEI this and anti-woke that, if they do make moves on certain schools and departments and colleges at FAMU, specifically the concerns have been the law school. I believe that Board of Governors Vice Chair Alan Levine made some comments once that were not so cryptic about taking the law school and moving it under the control of the University of Central Florida. There have been comments in the last few years about moving pharmacy and allied health and potentially nursing over across the street to Florida State. And like I talked about at Commissioner Proctor's town hall, that's not histrionics, as lobbyist Barney Bishop dismissively said last week. What it is history, not histrionics. That's what they did with the original FAMU Law School. School ended one day in April, and next thing you know, it ended permanently, and the school opened up the next August over at Florida State University with books that were still stamped FAMU College of Law. And so if you know that history and you know the nature of the individuals who throw stones and hide hands and what have you, then we have to always be watchers on the wall and ever vigilant to make sure that when those snakes, and I'm not talking about rattlers, I'm talking about adders, real snakes, try to slither up and take what's ours, that we're able to cut their heads off through the legal process. So those are the things that I think that we need to be prepared to do. Okay.
Thank you for that. Someone asked, and y'all, we're a little bit over time, so if y'all will bear with us just for a few more minutes. Kanisha said, talk about the potential impact of a new governor in 2026, 2027.
If we can get a Democrat that's worthwhile, it surely would be helpful. I'm one of those folks who worked hard to elect Andrew Gillum back in 2018. We were this close to getting there. If he had been the governor, we would be having none of these problems that we're facing right now. But what that told me is that Andrew did so well in 2018 that if we are committed and if we can find a really good Democrat to run, it is very possible that the Democrats can retake the governor's mansion next year. Right now, on the Republican side, the only confirmed person that I'm aware of is Byron Donalds. He is a Black man who actually attended FAMU for a little bit, but he is a Trump supporter, hardcore MAGA. And what I'm getting at with that is there's a possibility that he's going to have a contentious Republican primary with Casey DeSantis, that there are rumors that the governor's wife is considering running. And so that's going to be interesting to watch. But in the meantime, if we can coalesce behind a really good Democrat and get the word out early, and because there's a lot of people across the state of Florida that are hurting from a lot of the policies that are coming forth from Washington since Donald Trump reemerged in office back in January. And I strongly believe there's going to be some backlash. I'm not saying total backlash, but there's going to be some backlash next year as people are starting to realize that those food stamps aren't stamping and the Medicaid checks aren't coming in and they can't pay for Meemaw and Pawpaw's insulin. That they are going to be looking for folks who can provide some type of political opposite to what's happening right now. So stay tuned on that. But I definitely am looking forward to seeing who can come forth out of the Democratic side so that we can start to coalesce early and make it happen.
Okay.
I concur with Attorney Hobbs. I concur completely. And I would also suggest that the Hispanic population of Florida, if they are not, haven't been proselytized to yield their commitment to Republican politics after being rounded up, hunted down, unceremoniously deported, if they won't let go and come on home or at least abandon Republican policies until this president leaves power, that needs to occur. The conversations with the Hispanic community as a block of voters would be very, very helpful if we had statesmen, stateswomen who could get that block of voters. If we could get them to reflect upon the pain, the targeting, the elimination of their race from the economy, from off the very space and place of the earth, they've got to wake up. If they do, there's a strong possibility that the Democratic base can swell up. We can take that number to take the gubernatorial house again.
Okay, so question from Otis Kirksey, and then I have a message from Attorney Jacobs. So let me get Kirksey first, and then I'll share what Attorney Jacobs just shared with me.
Said, you know, Nicole, Attorney Hobbs works by the hour. You know you owe him overtime.
I know the billables is. Listen, my billable.
All I need is a dozen newt from Shell's Oyster Bar and some Tabasco. And I'm good. Y'all know I like to eat.
I was watching the clock because I didn't want Nicole to go broke trying to pay you, Chuck.
No.
I can handle that.
Pay me in oysters. Okay.
All right. Otis Kirksey, is it legal for an individual who participated to this flawed process be provided high-level jobs at the university? Is that legal quid pro quo?
That is an excellent question, good brother Otis Kirksey, and to be continued is all I can say. I've heard some rumors about certain people being able to benefit financially, be it through consulting contracts or be it through actually being put on campus in positions, and that's going to be interesting to see. And as watchers of the wall, we'll be calling that out if we get to that point. And I say if because I'm still very much optimistic in the efforts that Attorney Jacobs and Attorney Akbar are about to do in court. But if for some reason we do not prevail, we being the keepers of the flame, FAMU stakeholders, then yes, Brother Kirksey, it does bear watching to see if certain folks that were behind the scenes in the shadows trying to make this presidency happen all of a sudden pop up with $200,000 a year salaries, $300,000 a year salaries, $500,000 consulting fees, and the like. So stay tuned on that, good brother.
All right.
Let me say to that extent that I've heard those same rumors, and I'm willing to file a Florida ethics complaint for anybody who had a vote to move this candidacy forward of an unqualified person, and they end up on campus or consultant. I'm filing an ethics complaint because I call that quid pro quo. And these seats or the vote should not be for sale. But to me, and I'm very simple-minded, you vote for somebody who's miserably falls so short, and then you turn around and get a major $200,000 post from them. I mean, I went to a real simple little school, and the wrong and the rights of it, we try to keep things simple. That seems wrong.
Amen.
All right. So Attorney Jacobs said, please be advised, it is vital that everyone review the actual document that was filed. This document does not request a restrictive injunction to stop the Florida Board of Governors from acting to confirm the election of the president-elect. This document requests the court to issue a mandatory requirement injunction to require that an independent consultant be retained to conduct an internal investigation of the full presidential selection process. It further requests that the court issue a mandatory requirement for the foundation to conduct a financial feasibility analysis of a fiscally responsible presidential compensation package, which would become the metrics for any board of trustees decision on the compensation package. Finally, the petition asks the court to reserve in jurisdiction, and if the consultants reveals conduct by the board of trustees members that amount to the breach of fiduciary duty, to impose legal remedies for the breach.
Amen. Attorney Jacobs, and he's like Yoda. So his word, yeah.
Look, look, a whole paragraph.
Yeah, he's that dude. Mm-hmm.
So I put that link in the chat. I think someone requested the to be able to read what was filed. So it's up on the screen now, but you can go through the chat either on Facebook or YouTube and read it in more detail. Okay. All right. I think we're gonna make this the last question. This is Mr. Darren Dante Bonner. He said, "Why isn't a Democratic name floating? Do people think there isn't a good candidate?"
Yeah, well, somebody up in the chat made a comment about Dave Jolly. Jolly is a former Republican who is now running as a Democrat for the gubernatorial position. And I don't know much about him yet. I haven't really dug in to start to study, but I can tell you that with his initial comments that he made last week, he seems promising. But again, the Democratic Party, both statewide and nationally, has to get to a point in which it starts to fight. I mean, let's just be honest, that there's just been a lack of organization and fighting on the state level and definitely on the national level. Mm-hmm. And this is a perfect time for the Democratic Party to coalesce and begin to move in unison, because people are suffering. And again, I'm not just talking about those of us who are Democrats or independents who with Democratic leanings are suffering. There's a whole lot of Republicans are suffering. And I know that if you're on social media, they do a lot of trolling and they make a lot of comments about owning the libs. But I'm telling y'all, these policies are hurting folks in red states all across the United States of America. They're having problems making ends meet. They're having problems buying groceries. And there are a lot of things that are just not tenable, that aren't going to last. And so if Democrats can provide viable alternatives to the status quo, there is a chance for Democrats to take back the governor's mansion here in Florida. Not necessarily the legislature, because 20, 30 years worth of gerrymandering has this place so discombobulated that it would be tough to have a Democratic majority in the Florida legislature. But we can surely take the governor's mansion, because we almost did it in 2018 with Andrew Gillum. But we have to have that same level of steely focus and onboarding with the messaging, and I think everything will be all right.
Court said no. Court said no more former Republicans.
I feel you, brother. I feel you. Okay.
So listen. I'm not trying to get charged double billables here with attorneys Hobbs and Proctor. We do have a few more questions. Janae White, who's here in Tallahassee, said, "How will anyone trust that future policies and standards will be enforced under this leadership?" I think we can just ponder that for ourselves. Yeah. And then Lawrence Delva Gonzalez, "What's FAMU's budget? How is it doing?" That's a loaded one as well. So I want to bring this to a close. I really do appreciate everyone being on here. We got some other comments in the chat. I hope that the folks who have been on this live, this has really benefited you. If it has, let us know in the comments. I see we got Mia on. She said, "This has been outstanding. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you." And then I gotta finally just give you all some opportunity to give some closing remarks, if you will. So,
okay. I'll go ahead. I started off, I'll end up. Again, y'all, this is not a time for us to get down in the dumps and feel as if there aren't options. There are options, okay? And, many of us are spiritual, and we have to understand that this is the will of God concerning us at this time. And so with that, that doesn't mean roll over and play dead. It means that we have to stop being apathetic, and we have to pay attention. It's critically important because the future of Florida A&M University is really at stake right now. Another thing that I want to encourage everybody with, for those who are hardcore anti Marva Johnson types, and I'm not saying that I am that, but keep in mind that the FAMU presidency has been a revolving door, unfortunately, ever since President Frederick S. Humphreys retired back in 2001. I mean, we've had on average, I did the math too, Brother Proctor, we've had on average a new president every 3 years at FAMU. So that does not bode well for Marva Johnson making it to 5 years. And those were new presidents that came in and did not come in with a cloud hanging over their heads, a dark cloud, as Marva Johnson would from day one. So with that in mind, we have to, again, continue to do what we can to support students, to support faculty who are on campus. There's going to be some great discussions. And Nicole, I would love to have another conversation with you and Commissioner Proctor later about ways that we can make sure that funds get directly to students and or faculty who need them, so that those funds aren't siphoned off to pay for somebody's Mercedes or Cadillac or vacation in Bermuda or whatever, right? So with that in mind, we have to be watchers on the wall, and I look forward to continuing these conversations here with Nicole, as well as on my Facebook page, and as always in the Observation Point.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chuck. Mr. Proctor?
Well, when Chuck started talking about Cadillacs, I thought, Nicole, don't you have a Cadillac or something?
Not.
Getting real personal.
That's you, sir.
Oh, okay. They start getting personal about this thing. I think that Frederick Douglass told us years ago that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. And when we lose that simple message, and we can't pass the torch of that message from generation to generation, we find ourselves in the moment we are now. I believe that the totality of the Rattler Nation is bigger, better, greater than Marva Johnson. The 2, 3, 4, the 8 in particular is greater than the 8 people who voted. What we have found out and is why the same Black people on one board is sitting on, controlling, gatekeepers, and strangulating all the other universities as well. I don't know how many folk on FAMU board sit on other HBCU boards in this state. It's 23 million people in Florida. We ought to have one board exclusive with a loyal, dedicated board membership that does not have a foot here, foot there, and all like that. I don't want you coming to my football practice if you're a coach from the other team, looking at my plays, looking at where I get my money, looking at my donors list, understanding who our cluster supporters are. You get to look at all of our information and carry it to God only knows. And I think that too is a formula that needs to be fixed. I believe that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence perhaps in this moment not seen. But we're going to remain steadfast, immovable, and abounding in the faith. And we're going to put on the whole armor of God, that we're able to withstand even the dots of the fiery dots of an evil one. And I'm so grateful to be a FAMUan from 1st through 12th grade, and to be the son, as both Attorney Hobbs and I are both sons of FAMUan mothers and fathers twice over, I believe. So to God be the glory. Nicole, thank you for your courage to hold this conversation tonight. And always, it's always an honor to share stage with Attorney Hobbs and to be on your show. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you both. Y'all made it easy. Just you've done the work and definitely have enlightened the folks. And I'm getting all sorts of comments from folks about just how informative that they believe this discussion was. My brother Gerald Tooks, very informative conversation. Thank you so much, Kiosha, Mo, Andre Williams, Dante, Joyce, everybody. Miss Pat said, go ahead and schedule the next live session right now.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll figure all of that out. But I definitely am very grateful for both your insight and the work that you have done to keep us abreast of what's going on. Michael Cork said, great show. Yes.
Can Attorney Hobbs give me a call after the show? There's one piece of information I need to secure, and I can't locate a particular phone number that I need to reach out to Attorney Hobbs. So you call me after the show.
Calling you in a few seconds, brother.
All right,
Yes,
Dr. Packer,
Okay.
you have to do a part 2.
Okay.
Lisa Tooks, great conversation. So lots of comments. E is on here. Thanks to Hobbs and Proctor. Appreciate you all for being on here. Yeah, so great conversation. For those of you who may be new to the platform, I got a plug since we had almost 200 viewers on here tonight that I could see. But I definitely want to encourage you to subscribe to Conversations with Nicole on YouTube. We are live here on Mondays and Wednesdays, focus on mental health and wellness in Black and Brown communities most of the time, but sometimes we, have to do some other things like tonight. The state of FAMU I thought was very important. And so I'm grateful for the folks that were on here tonight. FAMU Nation definitely stood up, showed up and showed out tonight with the comments and the questions. And we really appreciate that. So subscribe, that's supporting. And, we appreciate your viewership, and we will get a part 2 scheduled as soon as possible. All right, good people. Y'all have a great rest of the evening, and we will see y'all soon. Peace.